and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building. And as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
I just saw another plane coming in from the side.
You did. That was out of
yes, and that's the second explosion. You could see the plane come in just from the right-hand side of the screen. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway in downtown New York.
September 11th, 2001. It's a day that all Americans remember. Around 8:45 that morning, the nation watched in horror as New York City's World Trade Centers were attacked by jet airplanes. Not long afterward, the Pentagon was also attacked. Chaos ensued as people flooded the streets, wondering at the motive of such a tragedy. Debris and dust caked the morning air as both buildings collapsed, sending pedestrians running in a frenzy. Firefighters pulled people out of the burning buildings. Those that had escaped were walking about the streets covered in ash, grime, and blood. An array of emotions were experienced that day. There was heartache, sadness, anger, anxiety, confusion, but no other emotion was more prevalent that day than fear.
Holy shit, man. That's the other building. That's terrorists. Other building? That's terrorists, bro.
Television news stations everywhere interrupted their scheduled broadcasts, providing live coverage of the attack. As news reporters and anchors watched helplessly, they began asking the questions that were already forming in the minds of many Americans. Who was doing this? How did this get past America? Most importantly, what were we going to do about this? Newspapers immediately followed the television broadcasts with headlines speculating about the motive of the attack. Taking the lead on this reporting was the nation's top newspaper, the New York Times. Several news stories ran out of the Times, with headlines declaring terrorism. During the publication of these articles, a new term emerged that seemed to instill even more fear into the hearts of Americans and justify the need for war in the Middle East. WMDs, weapons of mass destruction.
Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly, yet our purpose is sure. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
Reporters at the New York Times continued advancing the existence of WMDs in their articles. One of the principal writers at the Times was Washington correspondent Judith Miller, who famously ran the headline, U.S. says Hussein intensified quest for A-bomb parts. Miller continued reporting on WMDs, writing a series of front-page articles for which she received a Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting. Other newspapers and major media outlets began to follow suit, reporting the existence of nuclear weapons that had the potential to inflict mass casualties. Only a few news outlets, including Knight Ridder's Washington Bureau, questioned these claims. Knight Ridder remained one of the only news sources to report it right. Without the red carpet access to high-level officials, which the New York Times enjoyed, Ridder was still able to report with accuracy. The former executive editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, expressed her regrets about the reporting of WMDs.
The Times really did brandish on the front page some very questionable stories that were based on, Iraqi defectors who had an interest in promoting the toppling of Saddam Hussein, who were going around to various reporters, including reporters at the Times, peddling, the story of this ramped up WMD program, which of course didn't exist.
To conduct their reporting, the New York Times relied heavily on sources provided through the Bush administration, specifically Iraqi informants, defectors, and exiles who had a political agenda. One of those defectors included convicted embezzler Ahmed Chalabi. U.S. officials who were convinced of the need to intervene in Iraq confirmed these accounts. Even former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney quoted from the Times as a way to justify going to war, In an apology article published by the New York Times, the editorial board admitted that many of Judith Miller's published articles were full of dramatic but unverified claims and unreliable sources. The article even states that particular writers downplayed skepticism and conflicting evidence readily available to any reporter.
And when our first public editor wrote about this, it was Dan Okrent. He had a great line. He said, the bad stories were played as the lead of the paper, and the right ones were played as quiet as lullabies. And that's true, and I wish I could change that.
Judith Miller was later fired by the New York Times. The New York Times provided a variety of reasons for the paper's failings, pointing to the faults of individual reporters, editors who were, quote, too intent on rushing scoops into the paper, and the lack of follow-up articles. May have played a role in the relatively uncritical approach of news organizations like the Times. Another factor may have been the calls for national unity following the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. Warren Strobel, also of Knight Ridder, was quoted saying, "Many other news organizations were willing to give the administration the benefit of the doubt." It was not just the New York Times that failed to report accurately. Indeed, there were several other newspapers that reported the existence of WMDs, including the Washington Post. And although it was later reported in 2009 that WMDs may have been found in Iraq, the ethical question at hand is not what was reported, but how it was reported. I base my argument on the SPJ Code of Ethics, which clearly states that journalists are required to report with accuracy and fairness. As part of the tenet to seek truth and report it, journalists have a responsibility to report accurately and to verify information before releasing it. The New York Times obviously violated that portion of the SPJ Code. As journalists, we are to report truth by gathering a variety of sources with diverse experiences and viewpoints. By continuously relying on Iraqi defectors who had a political agenda to overthrow Saddam Hussein, the New York Times denied their responsibility to seek the truth. The Times should have been more open to dissenting voices on the existence of WMDs, and although some of those articles have been written, the Times admitted that they were often buried in the newspaper and not on the front page. Indeed, 9/11 was a time of great terror and sorrow that affected everyone and led America to unite again. It also instilled a fear that was often reflected in newspaper headlines everywhere. Although the reporting practices may have been wrong, there is no doubt that it was out of an intent to seek answers and to provoke action. Perhaps, if we received these answers, we could prevent terrible occurrences like this from happening again.